Oh my, it's been quite a while since I read something this flavoursome. No pun intended. I'm not saying I was disappointed that there was no breastfeeding scene in this book. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, don't put a nipple on the front cover and call your book Milkfed if you're not going to commit to the vision. Italian style. This book is like if the Dyke and the Dybbuk and Big Swiss got together, made sweet love and had a baby. That is one gay and unhinged baby, said the nurse to my mother when I was born. And she said, oh God, take it away. No, I'm joking. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video I'm just going to be reviewing the book Milkfed by Melissa Broder. If you're not familiar with Milkfed, it's about a young woman with an eating disorder who finds salvation in the arms of an Orthodox Jewish woman who works at a frozen yogurt shop. Delicious. Trigger warning for this book and review. There's mentions of an eating disorder and trauma around weight, body image, and food. Also, this book is very adult. Now, personally, I don't think that there's anything that shocking in this book, but it's not about polite hand-holding either, so be aware. Also, for people looking for lesbian or sapphic book recommendations, I should add here for informational purposes, this book follows a bisexual protagonist, so whilst the main romance in the book is between two women, there are one or two heterosexual encounters. It's minimal, but it's there. Yes, trigger warning, heterosexual activity. And finally, this video will contain spoilers, so if you have not read this book, you have been warned. Now let's do it. So I read Milkfed in just one day. I found it incredibly engrossing, and I have to say, for the most part, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as sexually debauched as I thought it was going to be, which was a little disappointing. People really hyped up the erotic aspects of this book, so I was expecting a bit more from it. But that said, it's certainly not a plain vanilla read either. I think a good way to describe this book is as a filthy spectacle. It's very out there, it's unapologetically and uncomfortably raw in places, and its crude honesty tinged with absurdity makes it comparable to a book such as Big Swiss. If you're a fan of novels which aren't afraid to explore the murkier or filthier aspects of life, or an Otessa Moshfegh fan, you may well enjoy this book, but I don't think it would be appreciated by people who tend to shy away from cruder or more explicit content. For the most part, I found the writing in Milkfed humorous and intelligent, and I did laugh out loud a couple of times when I was reading it. Yes, the writing is fairly concise, which makes it an easy read, but it's by no means basic. I think Broder has a distinct writing style where she manages to strike up quite a nice balance between substance and succinctness in her work. As for the sapphic elements, which is why I picked this book up, it's certainly not a love story, but the core of the narrative does heavily revolve around a sapphic romance. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that it wasn't just sapphic crumbs, but a whole sapphic cake. And do I love sapphic cake? It was so refreshing to read a book where the sapphic romance was unapologetically at the front and center. Usually that is not the case in books which follow a bisexual protagonist. Sometimes it's not even the case in books which follow a lesbian protagonist. So I really appreciated that. That said, I also found the sapphic elements in this book both relatable and reductive in certain places respectively. For example, I found the part of the book where Rachel tries to equate lesbianism to having mummy issues, or has trouble accepting Miriam as her lover and instead tries to rationalize it away as her seeking out a friend or a sister, as though it were the 1950s, rather reductive. Considering that Rachel seems fairly secure in her sexuality and has been with women before, it doesn't really make any sense for her to have that mindset. in relation to her relationships with women. But at the same time, this book is designed to be sexually shocking. For example, Rachel has mother and daughter sexual fantasies, or she'll sometimes switch up her sex in her fantasies too. So I feel like the whole equating a female lover to a mother concept is thrown in there for that purpose. Broda certainly doesn't shy away from exploring the more experimental aspects of female sexuality and sexual fantasy in this novel. Some of it is an honest reflection on the inherently messy and nonsensical nature of human sexuality, but some of it is also clearly contrived and thrown in there for shock value. And because Milkfed was purposefully written to be a spectacle, that needs to be taken into consideration when discussing the sexual aspects of the book. Now, I appreciate that the protagonist Rachel is bisexual, but even still, I thought things such as the mention of a male appendage in an otherwise beautiful moment of connection between Miriam and Rachel, simply just holding hands, was kind of unnecessary, and also felt to me like pandering to a heteronormative audience, in the sense that men have to be included in sapphic relationships for them to be appealing. I feel like things like that reinforce negative stereotypes about bisexual women, you know, like prioritizing and pandering to men. It's that tiresome cliche of women not being allowed to exist outside of men, or women not being allowed to just be the focus. But again, I can acknowledge that things like that are also potentially related to the shock factor of the book, and to be honest, outside of that, any heterosexual activity or Rachel's attraction to men is very minimal and vastly overshadowed by the sapphic elements. So, swings and roundabouts, I guess. To me, the most interesting aspect of this novel is how Broda reframes and experiments with sex and food through the character of Rachel, and the way she contrasts and merges emotional and physical nourishment. Food and eating is a consistent theme in the book, and Rachel recalls thinking about food during having sex, and she sees Miriam and describes her as though she's food to be devoured. So there's a very clear parallel of desire between food and women, and an exploration of sex through emotional and physical needs, which I found very thought-provoking. One thing that greatly amuses me about Milkfed is its descriptions of women, which swing between poetic and crude, as do the love scenes, but I actually think that's a part of its charm. And I found that some of the cruder aspects were anchored to a place of authenticity, which made them much more forgivable. I will say that towards the end of the book, it began to feel to me as though Miriam solely existed for the purpose of Rachel's sexual gratification, and it began to read to me as though it was the author's self-insert erotic fan fiction, as opposed to reading about two actual human beings who are trying to connect. But I have to say, I do think that that's tied into the fact that the writing and narrative goes rapidly downhill towards the end of the book, which we'll get into more in a bit. As for the themes of eating disorders and body image in Milkfed, the book does explore the impact of things such as fat shaming and the connection between weight and self-worth. And the book does a good job of illustrating how Rachel experiences the world primarily through food and calories. It's woven into everything she does, and I think that Broda does a good job of showing how this obsession with food impacts every single part of Rachel's life and her sense of self. Now, I know that there's some controversy over the way that Broda has approached certain issues in the book. And because the tone of the book is crude and humorous, it can be perceived as her making light of serious issues. And whilst I've never been fat or had an eating disorder that was connected to body image, only my health, I did find some of it relatable in relation to my own experiences. But I will say that trauma, body image, and eating disorders are so subjective. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation, and so therefore different people are going to have different ways of expressing and framing those issues, which can sometimes include humour. Milkfed is also an interesting exploration of the intersection between Judaism and sexuality. It highlights how homophobia is still very much present in certain religious communities and individuals, even in ones who lean towards a more liberal mindset. And I thought it was interesting that Rachel reconnects or explores her Jewish identity through her relationship with Miriam. Like I said earlier, Milkfed is somewhat reminiscent of the Dyke and the Dybbuk, in that it intertwines Jewish folklore with Sapphic Romance, which is such a unique and interesting concept. And in Milkfed, there's mention of the golem, which in Jewish folklore is a creature formed out of a lifeless substance that is brought to life by ritual incantations and sequences of Hebrew letters, and assumes the role of a helper or a companion. And the concept of this creature very much mirrors Rachel's relationship with Miriam. So you could interpret Rachel's romantic relationship with Miriam, or even the existence of Miriam herself, in multiple ways if you so wanted, which adds a lot of layers to the book. So I'd say my biggest and perhaps my only real criticism of Milkfed is the way that the writing deteriorates towards the end. It just becomes shockingly rushed and neglected to the point that I'm kind of surprised that they sent it to print in that state. Like I said, Rachel and Miriam's characterization and the writing around their relationship, in particular, went rapidly downhill. They never really have a proper conversation about what's happening between the two of them. Their interactions randomly stop and start and then just become completely neglected altogether. And it was like Broda didn't know what to do with the character of Miriam after she'd served her sexual purpose. And once she'd furthered Rachel's character development, she was just thrown to the side. It just read to me as though Broda had had enough of writing the book and was just rushing to be done with it, not really caring about what happened to any of the characters that she had created, or like she just didn't know what to do with them, which was a disappointing end to what was otherwise a very thoughtful and engaging piece of work. Overall, I really enjoyed Milkfed. I thought it was an engrossing read, and it's a book which offers a lot of interesting and unique elements. It is very much a spectacle designed to shock, and the cruder aspects won't be everybody's cup of tea, but I liked it. The book's got ovaries, and do I like ovaries? Being inside a woman. My dream. Okay guys, if you've read Milkfed, let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!